Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven. Today, our special guest is Susan Breen. Susan is the award-winning author of the fiction class in the Maggie Dove mystery series. She teaches novel writing at Gotham Writers and has been on the faculty of conferences from Cape Cod to Dubai. She loves stories about families, London, ghosts, guilt, atonement, dogs, Charles Dickens, and Christmas. She likes the idea of collecting rare books, so far she's only collected two, both of them being early editions of A Christmas Carol. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Now, I'm excited to read that you're part of the Gotham Writers. I mean, I heard a lot. I don't know. I just think of Batman when I hear this name. So tell me a little bit about your writing career and how you got started.
Teaching or writing? Well, actually, they're combined, so I can talk
Okay.
about both. I started off as a short story. Well, I started off as a reporter for Fortune magazine. Then, when I had children, it just became an impossible job. So I stayed home and I began writing short stories. I spent 10 years reading and writing short stories. And then I got a job working for Gotham Writers, which is at that time pre-Zoom was based in the city, in New York City. And I spent over that time, I've had, I'm sure, more than 1,000 students. We meet, there are only 14 of us in a classroom. We critique work, we talk. It is the best training for being a writer because, for one thing, you're surrounded with writers all the time, and that's a great thing. And so I've been doing that for 20 years now, and I am still teaching. And they have been with me as I've written my new book, Mary, which just came out, which is here.
Oh, yes. Now, so has it developed into a hybrid model at all, your Gotham Writers? Are you
Yes,
still working there?
totally. Yeah, it's I would say most of the time now I work on Zoom, and which is great because my students come from all over, Singapore, Australia, and so forth, and then also New York. But this semester, for the first time in years, I'm teaching in person, and it's really exciting to be in person, I have to say. There's something, it's very hard to chat on Zoom, and
Yes.
you see, it's harder to read people's body language, and I don't know. So I really enjoy it, but at the same time, it cuts down on the number of people I can talk to. So it's you win some and lose some. But in the winter, I'll go back on Zoom. But for now, I love New York City. I'm from New York City, and it's just so much fun to be able to walk around the city and see all the craziness that is there and teach on 8th Avenue. I teach right near the Port Authority, which is not one of the premier parts of New York City, but we certainly get a lot of stories.
Now, you mentioned you wrote for Fortune magazine, like you were writing nonfiction, and then
Yes.
somehow, well, I guess you got into fiction through the Gotham Writers, I guess.
Yes, I've always loved to read, but I didn't feel like I could. To me, being a writer was such a big thing, a fiction writer.
Mhm.
To be a novelist just seemed overwhelming. I didn't think I had, I don't know, I just didn't feel like I had not so much the talent, but the gravitas to be a writer. And so being a reporter was my way into that, where I could get used to writing. I love interviewing people, I love talking to people. But over time, as more and more of my work was published, and I realized that there were people interested in what I had to say, it gave me more confidence. But I did spend 10 years working on short stories, and it took me a while to build up to writing a novel. It's hard.
Yeah, I know writing is the hardest thing I've ever done.
It really is. And you're really putting your heart on the page. And so it's almost like you're revealing yourself to, you are revealing yourself to strangers. And I was just talking to my students last Wednesday about what are the roadblocks we put in front of ourselves when it comes to writing. And one of the hardest thing is this idea that people are going to know what you're really thinking. And all your relatives who may have thought you were crazy all along now know for a fact that you are. So
Okay, well, since we're talking about you teaching and students, like, do you have any like good pieces of advice for I guess, writers in general or new writers?
I was thinking about that. I one thing that I wish somebody had told me that I wish I had thought about was to dream big. I feel like I was always sort of trying to do the safest thing possible, to try and write a book that I knew I could write, not to challenge myself too much because it was scary. But when I came to write Mary, um, my agent basically said, just go out there, do the biggest thing you can do. Don't be afraid to take it on. And I wish, quite honestly, that I had done that 20 years ago. Not that there was anything wrong with my writing, but I think now, when I think about my young self, I think I wish I'd had the courage to just say, I'm going to write a big novel right now. But on the other hand, maybe I wouldn't have had as much to say. Yeah, maybe it wouldn't have been good. Who knows? The other thing is I'm a big believer in writing every day. Like I'm always telling my students that even if it's only for 15 minutes, um, it's important to write every day. And the other thing I tell them is that they are harder on themselves than anybody. Like they will read me something and they'll say, "This is really awful. I know it." And I always say, "No, like let somebody else tell you that." But this is good. Don't give up on yourself yet. So much of writing is getting yourself into the right mindset, giving yourself permission to write. So I
It's
guess,
true. Yeah, because you're almost building a different world for
yeah,
someone to go in, to escape into.
yes, that's true. And I think you're also offering a form of friendship. I feel like a lot of people read because they are looking to connect with somebody. And I'm always, when I'm writing, thinking about who might be reading this and what can I tell them? Like, how can I connect with them? And I've come to the conclusion that the best thing I can do is be honest, because I've found that whenever I put something on the page that is that I'm sort of nervous about, that I think, oh gosh, that's going to come off wrong. Invariably, that's the thing that people connect with. And they say, I didn't know somebody else was feeling that way. Thank you for saying that.
Okay. Now, do you have any writing habits? Like, you said you write every day, I'm guessing.
I do.
And okay, okay.
And let me think if I have a habit. Um, I used to uh, I used to write everything out by hand, but I don't do that anymore. But I do still like to write a lot of it by hand. I mean, I do feel like when you're writing with a pen, there's something more direct about the way it goes from your brain to your
Mhm.
hand to the paper. So I like that, but I just got this cramp in my hand. So it made it hard to do. So now I'm
Yeah,
typing more. But
yeah. I was at a conference recently and people were asking me to sign books, and I was like, my handwriting has gotten so much worse these days, because
I
they're not
know,
doing it. So,
I know. We're hard on our bodies, I think, writers.
okay. Now you have a new book out,
Yeah.
and and it's about Charles Dickens and as a ghost.
Yes.
And can you give us a little synopsis and tell us what inspired this book? Although I mean, I'm reading your bio. I'm like, I think I think that sort of told a lot, but yeah, I'll let you tell the story.
Well, I can tell you the dramatic version of the
Okay,
story, which
okay.
is that I had been writing mysteries, which I loved. I've always loved mysteries, and I've written three, and so I was in the middle of writing four, the fourth one, and I wound up in the hospital, which I had an allergic reaction to something very serious, it was bad. And I didn't think I was going to make it. And in the midst of all this, I get a text from my agent saying, I had a dream that you would write an inspirational story. So I thought, okay, why not? I mean, I have always had a sort of hopeful way of looking at the world. And so I thought, I can do this. But then came the problem of what to write. I mean, you can't just say, well, I'm going to write an inspirational story and so it appears. So I knew it was going to relate to Christmas. And I basically spent a year reading Christmas stories, reading things by Richard Paul Evans or Jenny Colgan or all the people who write these wonderful stories, all of which are very different. And in the end, I thought, the part of Christmas I've always loved is Christmas Carol and Charles Dickens. And I began to think about a woman who had a very valuable copy of A Christmas Carol, something that was worth a fortune. And she loved it, and it had been passed down for 5 generations in her family. And she thinks she's dying, and she thinks that she wants to pass it down to her son, and he doesn't want it. And none of her children want it. And she is beside herself. This is the family treasure, and nobody wants it. And this is something I've read about a lot with baby boomers, that nobody wants our stuff. It seemed reasonable to me. So then I thought about, okay, so what if that happens? Then what if she sells this book, takes the money to take her family to London, where hopefully her 3 children are in their 30s. She will be able to heal everything that's going on with them. And she does. And she gets to England, but of course, everything goes wrong. On top of which, the ghost of Charles Dickens starts to haunt her, and he's angry.
Oh, okay, okay.
So,
Now, okay, I was gonna ask you, were there any real life experiences or family traditions that you had that made it into the book?
well, that's interesting. I do, in fact, love to read A Christmas Carol on the night before Christmas. I have taken my children to London. We did not have anything disastrous happen, and I was not haunted by Charles Dickens. But I do know that when you travel with a family of adult and strong-minded people, a lot of interesting things can happen. One of the things I had thought was that I've read a lot of books by children, adult children, about their parents, but you don't read a lot of books by parents about their children. And I
Mm,
just thought, one of the things I've noticed with my friends as our children have gotten older is that there's not a lot you can do to help them if you're worried about them. Like if they're in kindergarten, you can call the teacher and you can do something. But
yes.
if they're 30, you can't call their boss, or you shouldn't.
No, no,
I
you
know
shouldn't.
people
You
who
shouldn't.
have, but you really should not do that. So I just began to think about, bringing all these things together about parents and children and Christmas. And for many people, Christmas is a very stressful time. For holidays are a stressful time. So I just wanted to bring all of that together.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Is Christmas one of the holidays you enjoy during the year?
I do. I do love Christmas. And like in one way I am very much like my protagonist is I do go over the top with Christmas. I mean, I've got little angels all over the place, and I have more than one tree, and I have stockings and so forth. And I have yeah, I have everything. So to me, on top of being a religious holiday, it's also a celebration of light. Like now, as it's getting darker and darker, I appreciate how much it must have meant to just have lights blazing in the dark. So for me, that's Christmas.
Yeah, and I feel sometimes people are, I don't know, like they reflect more upon that time period and they seem nicer than usual.
I think so. It's also a very nostalgic time because you can't help but think about if you celebrate Christmas every year or any holiday every year, the people who used to be there, who are no longer there when you were a child and you celebrated it. So I think it brings together lots of memories. So, which is part of what makes people so emotional about it.
Oh, definitely. Like my father's gone now, but I still remember lining up in the cold for some reason. In Canada, we have Boxing Day. So the day
Yeah.
after Christmas, all these sales, we're lining up. And I think we're buying telephones because back then people still had telephone landlines, right? So I remember doing that. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. Now, Charles Dickens' Ghost is a very interesting idea. Did you do a lot of research to figure out, I guess, what his character is like?
Yes, that was the hardest part of the whole thing was figuring out what his ghost should be like, partly because he was a very complicated man and a genius. And so to do justice to him, I didn't want him to come across as just some cartoonish character. I wanted him to come across as he might actually come across. He was a wonderful man, very concerned about the poor, very concerned about helping people, but he also had a dark side to him. And part of that dark side related to his treatment of women,
Hmm.
middle-aged women primarily. He was not good to his wife, who had 10 children, and he left her. He was not good to middle-aged women in general. And so I had a feeling that if I met him, or if Mary, my protagonist, met him, that he might not be as friendly as one might hope. He was not going to be this jolly kind of guy. And so she's got to win him over. He's annoyed at her because she sold his book, and she's sort of over the top, and the whole thing. And she wants him to help her, and he's got other stuff he's thinking about. So I like the idea of the two of them sort of battling it out, and Mary trying to win him over. So that gave a lot of narrative conflict to the book, was this idea. Of course, I adore him as a writer, but as a person, he
Yeah,
has no
yeah.
issues.
Now, in your bio, I read that you had two rare copies of A Christmas Carol. So, what is a rare copy, and why do you have two? Like, how are they different? Because I remember, I think he self-published it right in the beginning, or like he printed it himself.
He did. He was very much involved in the design of it. His
Mhm.
publishing house printed it, but yeah, he felt very strongly he wanted it to look beautiful because he wanted people to buy it as a gift, Christmas gift. And so with the result that he made no money just about on the sale of it because it was so expensive to produce that he didn't make much money. The the early versions of Christmas Carol that are from 1844 have these hand painted drawings in them. They're
Cool.
beautiful, like this bright yellow, and they're just lovely. But when I was in college, I went to an antiquarian book fair, and I saw a copy of A Christmas Carol, which I bought for $26, which at that time was a lot of money, or it was more money than I had anyway. And I have hung on to this copy of A Christmas Carol for a long time. I thought it was worth a fortune. Now, it winds up it's worth about $100, which not to say that's not a
Yeah,
fortune, but
you did pretty good.
I could not retire on that.
Yeah.
So when I was researching this novel, I thought, oh, I'll use this version that I have as the example. But in fact, it wound up that part of the problem is that so many copies of it were printed. There are just a lot of them out there. It's not
Oh,
that
okay.
it would be valuable if he had signed it. Um, but the one I own was from 1915. But then when I was researching this book, I came across one that was actually a seventh edition that was published in 1844, and I was able to buy that. So those are the two I own. So one is somewhat valuable, and the other is not valuable, but valuable to me. They look very different. One is very small, and one is like a normal size. And yeah, if what I never realized till I wrote this book is that books are beautiful. I mean, we love the stories, but you never think about how beautiful a book actually is. And so it was really fun to enter that world and to learn about book collectors and how obsessive they become. And it was interesting.
Now, I know most people know Charles Dickens for A Christmas Carol. Could you tell us about some of his other works that are your favorites?
Yes. Well, I would say my favorite of his books is Great Expectations,
Hmm.
which I read in high school and hated. I just like it was just it was just no good. But recently I listened to it on Audible, and when you hear an actor saying it, because I think he would have read it aloud beautifully, you get all the humor of it that doesn't actually come across when you're reading it. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, this is really a great book, which is not a surprise because many people think it is. But I just loved it. It had humor and tragedy, and it was just very funny. I was laughing out loud as I was listening to it. And then I also loved Bleak House. Um, that would also be David Copperfield was his favorite book. Um, and I'm reading that now, and I certainly like it a lot. I can't say it's my favorite book, but it's all what I love about him is his writing and his description and his heart and the way if he feels strongly for something and he feels strongly about everything, it just goes onto the page. So some of the descriptions in Bleak House about the way poor people were living really changed because of what he wrote. British laws changed about the way people would be treated, and that's tremendously powerful. So, yeah, so it's powerful to read and to think about.
Okay. Now, with your book, do you have are you going to write a sequel or is it a one-off, do you think, for this book?
No, I think it's a standalone, though
Okay.
it does certainly if somebody comes and begs me for a sequel, I will write
$100
it.
million. No.
Then I will certainly consider it. Um, I mean, I genuinely love the characters in the book. So if I had to spend more time with them, I would be happy. But I kind of felt like I told their story. And fortunately, I have many other stories yet to tell. So I think I can come up with other ones. I will say, though, that the next book I'm working on is not the same book, but it does involve Christmas and family and so forth. Not Dickens, unfortunately.
Okay. Now, if you could spend an afternoon with Charles Dickens, what would you want to ask him? Would you want to ask him anything? Although I don't know. My husband tells me not to meet idols because they might disappoint you.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I was just thinking, actually, my book club is reading a book by Truman Capote, In Cold Blood. He's a beautiful writer. But I remember a long time ago, he was signing books at a bookstore, and I was waiting on one of those long lines, to get his book signed. And I got up to him and I said, "Hi." And he gave me a look of such contempt. I just thought, oh my gosh, it was so awful. I never quite looked at him the same after that. And I guess he didn't not like people who said hi.
Oh no, you're right. I was a guest director for a lot of cons and like conventions in Toronto, fan conventions. I guess I was volunteering because, I didn't want to pay. And I remember one year I was guarding the door for Leonard Nimoy, who plays Spock,
Yeah.
because I was a big fan, right? And then when he started signing autographs, the first guy in line was dressed full in Spock costume and everything, but he was just signing autographs. He never looked up. He was just like
Oh,
sign next, and
oh,
I was like, oh, this is kind of sad. And then he was trying to give a talk about saving the whales, but as he was talking, all these flashes kept going off, like,
oh,
and he was getting really pissed. You could tell.
yeah.
But anyway, because people were there to see Spock, right? I'm
Right.
not sure how much of the whale message they got at the time. But no, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this day and age is very different, Like if Charles Dickens had social media, oh my goodness, that would be
I
it'll
think about that.
yeah.
I
I think he's
know.
a very clever man, though. He's a businessman. I'm sure he would have made use of everything. So
Yes, and he did have this whole acting background, so I imagine he would have
yeah,
been fine. He would have made it work.
yeah.
So,
Okay, so you're working on another novel. Um, Now any messages you want your readers to take from your book? Do you think, Mary? Like,
yes, well, I mean, a big part of this book is about a family coming together and healing. And basically, the way they do that is by talking. And I would love to think of people reading this book, maybe with their mother and their kids, and then talking about it. And everybody in this book is flawed in one way or another. The mother certainly is, and the kids are as well. And I just feel like I see this with my own kids that I we I certainly try to talk with them, but as kids get older, like it just becomes harder to sort of talk. So I think that I would love to think of people, not necessarily at Christmas, though that would certainly work, um, using this book as a way to talk to their kids.
oh, lovely. So Susan, you'll be doing a reading. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're reading, and then you can start.
Yes, I'm going to be reading the first chapter of the book, which is of Mary, which is short. And then, depending on how much time there is, I'll read the third chapter, which is also short. Um, yeah, I think particularly because it's the first chapter, it's self-explanatory. Or I
Okay,
hope.
sure. You just read. You can read both chapters. That's fine.
Okay. Oh dear. And shall I start? Okay. Chapter 1. Does Mary Bingham need to put up 6 Christmas trees this year? No, of course not. 5 would be more than enough. Neither does she have to put candles in each of the windows of her pink Victorian house, or order vintage tinsel from a private supplier in New York City, or buy presents for everyone at her office, especially given how notoriously particular antiquarian booksellers are, or try to get her 3 grown children to smile in a non-snarky way for the annual Bingham Christmas card, or make homemade sugar donuts to hand out to all the people who drive by her house every year to admire the lights and ask her how much her electric bill is. This could be the year that Mary Bingham is sensible about Christmas. She knows she's supposed to be sensible because everyone keeps telling her so. She's 55 years old and she's supposed to be thinking about downsizing and cutting carbohydrates and being careful. She is not supposed to be crawling around on the roof trying to attach Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to the eaves, especially not in the middle of a windstorm, though she does so love the feeling of being up high, the Hudson River stretched out beneath her, waves cresting like little sharks. She's never fallen off the roof before, not even close. So all right, she was stupid, and she was lucky the yew bushes broke her fall. Now her ribs are banged up, and she had to have an X-ray. She's back home and totally fine, except her entire body hurts when she breathes in. She feels like she hears a train rushing through her ears. You're not 25 anymore, her doctor said, which she thought was hostile, as though she doesn't know that, as though she does not know she is the same age her father was when he died, as though she has not spent the bulk of her life worrying about all the things middle-aged people are supposed to be worrying about, whether she'll ever pay off her credit card bills, and whether she and her husband will have enough money to retire on, and whether her children will ever find happiness. Her beloved children who can't seem to look at each other without snarling. She knows perfectly well she overdoes it when it comes to Christmas, but how can she not? Christmas is about a miracle. Christmas is about the world, how the world changed completely over one silent night. Christmas is about joy, redemption, transformation, and yes, bells and whistles and lights and reindeer. Christmas is the exact opposite of being sensible, and Mary doesn't care if she goes soaring right off the roof again and again. She is not surrendering Christmas. In fact, she comes from a long line of people who do not surrender. Starting with her ancestor, one little Nora Villard, who at the age of 10 waylaid Charles Dickens on a train on his way to New York City and persuaded the great author to give her his copy of A Christmas Carol, which he autographed. This same volume has passed through 5 generations of Mary's family, each one of Nora's descendants more ferocious and persistent than the previous. They were the sort of people who dashed into collapsing buildings to save people, explored the Antarctic, flew airplanes, crashed airplanes, and then got back into other airplanes. Bravest of all was Mary's father, Charles Dickens Villard III, known as Trip. He was the bravest because the battle he fought was so secretive, so unrelenting, so poisonous. Multiple sclerosis, a terrible disease that grabbed hold of Mary's father when he was only 32 years old, wrestled him into a wheelchair, and trapped him there for the final 2 decades of his life. 2 decades in which he did not complain, did not surrender, only tried to pass along his love of the holiday to Mary, who sat at his side each Christmas Eve, holding the family heirloom in her hands, praying that along with Scrooge's miracle would come a miracle for her father. Every single Christmas Eve she went to bed praying that the next morning she would wake up and find her father cured, a grown-up version of Tiny Tim with his wheelchair cast aside. Even though her father died before his miracle could take place, Mary has never stopped believing that Christmas is a time of magic. She looks forward to it all year. She tries to welcome it into her heart. She starts listening to that Christmas Carol station long before Thanksgiving. And if occasionally she feels as though it's more of a burden than it should be, if occasionally it feels a bit like a landmine, then she pushes the thought aside. Last year, the arguing among her 3 children got so bad that Nick, her oldest son, clenched his jaw so hard he broke a tooth and needed thousands of dollars of dental work. Bessie, her middle child, and Song Lee, her youngest, got into a vicious argument because Song Lee had gotten a job at a lobbying firm in Washington, D.C., and Bessie said she was selling out, and Song Lee said that was better than sharing a 5-bedroom apartment in Manhattan with 4 people who didn't like her. And Bessie said, how did she know? Who told her no one liked her? Was it on Instagram? That's when Mary's beloved husband locked himself in his office and put on music from the 90s. Mary's little dog started to twitch, and someone from American Express called to say that someone had stolen her card and was spending a lot of money, though that turned out to be a false alarm. It was just Mary spending all that money. But that was last year, and she's sure this year will be better. The kids are all arriving in 7 days. Dr. Fiedler assured her that her ribs would feel better soon. She feels confident that this will be her best Christmas ever. The kids are scheduled to arrive in 7 days on the 23rd. She's bought everyone's favorite foods. She spent hours thinking of the right gifts. She's made arrangements for them all to go Christmas caroling at a senior center nearby. Her husband has a beautiful tenor voice. She's even assembled costumes so they can put on a production of A Christmas Carol. She used to love to do that with her father. She'd dress up as Tiny Tim and he is Scrooge. She's so caught up in the memory that it takes her a moment to realize her phone's ringing. The number on the screen is her doctor's. She assumes, foolishly it turns out, that he's calling about a book. In addition to being her doctor, he's also a book collector, and she's been helping him build up a Dickens collection. So that's where her mind is when she hears Dr. Fiedler speak and realizes how wrong she is.
All
Is that
right.
10 minutes or
Are you going to read the next chapter?
should I, or have I gone on too long, or am I
Oh,
okay?
that's fine. If people are bored, they can shut off the podcast.
Okay.
Well, I love listening to you read. I'm like, oh my gosh, very
Well,
lovely.
that's good.
Is there going to be an audiobook of
There
this
is
book?
an audiobook.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do
it's
you
on
read it?
Spotify. No, a
Oh,
professional reads it.
oh,
So,
all right. So, okay. So this is a recording of you reading it. So, yes.
okay. Yeah. All right. So this is now chapter 3. So we've jumped ahead just a little bit. So her dog has just come in. He tiptoes into where she is, and the dog says, how can I help? Mary believes her dog talks to her. She spent so much of her life in the world of books that she's never entirely sure what's real and what's not. But she's about 90% sure the dog talks, 70%. He also speaks with a British accent because why not? A few years back, she was at the first book fair in London, talking to a lord who needed her advice about how to break up his library. And she was tempted to say, you sound just like my dog. But she didn't. That was back when she had energy and self-control, back when she didn't think she was dying, back before the doctor called. I have a nodule in my lung and I have to have a PET scan, and they're going to inject me full of radioactive tracers, and I have cancer. It's going to light up, all sparkly and bright and deadly and vicious. You don't like the word lung, the dog murmurs. No, I don't. He leaps alongside her, one swoosh of fur, and squeezes himself between her leg and the outside of the chair. He's so soft. She can never get over how soft his fur is, which is a constant sort of aggravation to him. Because although his body froths with curls and his default position is to curl into a snail-like ball, he dreams of being a Rottweiler. Actually, he dreams of being Samuel L. Jackson. Never watched Snake on a Plane with Cockapoo. He growls at larger dogs. He barks at the mailman. He throws out his chest. But alas, he is defeated by his cuteness. No one fears him. All anyone ever wants to do is stroke him and kiss his nose. Another creature betrayed by his body, she thinks. His name is Leroy. You will triumph, he murmurs. You are the bravest warrior in the world. You're my dog, Leroy. You're supposed to think that. Leroy is the one creature in this world who has never told her to be sensible. His eyes pulse with adoration. Sweet little face, sweet little nose. Remember that time you found that black thing in my fur and you got it out with your bare hands? It was an ant, Leroy. None of us was in any danger. And the time you thought a car was going to hit me and you pulled me out of the road? Well, yes, but I should have been more careful. That was actually my fault. She'd stopped to look at a vibrant chestnut tree and lost all sense of time and place. It was such a beautiful color. Or the time that big dog attacked and you threw yourself on top of me so he'd bite you and not me. She still has the scar on her arm, a jagged lightning strike of a thing. All right, that was pretty epic, she acknowledges. Though boy, had it hurt. She remembers lying on top of Leroy and kicking away the other dog, screaming for help, trying to grab onto a stick. She remembers how hard it was to keep struggling, to fight back, when she knew she was weakening, and all she could think about was how that dog would hurt Leroy. She stares into her little dog's face and she knows he's trying to will her courage. He wants to help her, but she fears this may be a fight she cannot win. That's a good place to stop.
So sad.
But it gets better.
Okay. Well,
She'll be okay.
well, thank you very much for taking time to chat with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Helix Press. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.